Welcome to the Expenses and Mileage Training for Support Staff. ISS has updated its internal tools and operations to streamline the processing of staff expenses through eTime. To learn more about this, let's watch a day in the life of Carlos and Owen. Carlos arrives at Owen's house to pick Owen up, as they are going to watch a movie for today's activity. Before they leave, Carlos navigates to the portal, taps Start Shift, and selects Owen. Today is a ComHab shift, and the method is face-to-face. Finally, Carlos selects home as his starting location. The shift is started, and as they are immediately heading out, Carlos decides to add his first mileage trip. To do this, he taps into his shift and then taps the Add Mileage button. First, Carlos needs to confirm that he is using his personal vehicle. If Carlos were using a vehicle owned by anyone else, he cannot ask for reimbursement, but today he is in his own car. Carlos and Owen are starting at Owen's home, which Carlos notes. Now, Carlos needs to specify his end destination, which is the movie theater. A general address like this one is adequate. After adding the address, Carlos needs to confirm the activity. Finally, Carlos needs to note how many miles he is driving. In this case, the movie theater is 10 miles away. Carlos taps Confirm and adds this trip to his shift. Carlos is now ready to drive Owen to the movie theater. Carlos and Owen arrive at the movie theater and head up to buy their movie tickets. Before they go in, Carlos wants to upload his movie ticket as a part of his shift expenses. Carlos taps his currently open shift to edit it. First, Carlos taps the Add Expense button. Next, he needs to pick what type of expense this is. Today's expense is considered an event. Now, Carlos needs to upload the photo of his movie ticket. At this point, Carlos needs to tell the eTime portal whether his uploaded document is an itemized receipt, proof of payment, or both. In some cases, Carlos may need to upload 2 documents. Luckily, that's not the case today. Finally, Carlos notes the activity and the amount for the expense before tapping Done. Having uploaded his expense and the accompanying documentation, Carlos hits Update and finishes adding the expense to his shift. Having enjoyed a fabulous movie, Carlos and Owen are ready to head home for the day. Before they leave, Carlos adds the second trip to his shift. Once again, Carlos taps into his active shift and uses the Add Trip button. Just like last time, Carlos confirms he is using his vehicle, fills out the starting location and the destination, notes the support activity, and inputs the miles traveled before tapping Confirm, and then tapping Update to add to his shift. With that all squared away, Carlos and Owen go home for the day. Carlos and Owen arrive back at Owen's house and say their goodbyes. Before Carlos goes home, he clocks out of his shift. When Carlos reviews his shift, he can see a list of the trips and expenses he has uploaded. If Carlos missed an expense or trip, he could upload it now. As he's checking his shift, Carlos notices that he accidentally wrote 100 miles instead of 10 miles on his second trip. To fix this, he taps the Edit button on the second trip. This brings him back to the trip details screen. Carlos changes the miles from 100 to 10 and taps Confirm. If Carlos needed to edit an expense error, it would work exactly the same way as editing a mileage error. If Carlos had added an expense or a mileage trip that should not be on the shift, he can delete them easily using the Delete button. Luckily, Carlos doesn't have any more mistakes to fix and is ready to end his shift. He selects the appropriate staff activities before selecting home as his ending location. Finally, Carlos has one more chance to double-check his information in the final review. Once he submits this shift to Maxine, it is out of his hands. If he finds an error or needs to add something to the shift, he will have to ask Maxine to return the shift to him. If Maxine has already approved the shift and submitted it to ISS, Carlos will need to submit a paper form and mail it in. Since Carlos hasn't made any other mistakes, he taps Submit and sends his shift to Maxine. This concludes the expenses and mileage training. Staff can now quickly record and edit their shift expenses and mileage in real time, just like their other shift details. Real-time recording of shift data will allow for rapid reimbursement processing, and staff will now be able to view the status of their reimbursements on the portal. For more information on portal submission of expenses and mileage, check out our help site at help.issny.org.